of XeroShoes.com, and I am thrilled that we are starting the Born to Run Reboot this evening. Happy to have you here. This is a live event. What that means is you can put in your comments and questions below or to the side, depending on the device you're using. We will see them on the screen, and Chris and Eric will answer. And let me just say what that means. So, as you may know, Chris McDougall is the author of Born to Run, came out back in 2009, that created this whole natural movement. And he and his running coach, Eric Orton, have teamed up to create Born to Run 2, the ultimate training guide. So in this series, the Born to Run Reboot, we are going to be letting Chris and Eric talk. I'll bring them on in just a second, answer your questions, and basically help you become a happier, healthier human being, whether you are a runner, not a runner and want to be a runner, not a runner and never cared about being a runner, or an elite runner as well. They're going to have things that are going to help you do all of those. And so we're really thrilled. I'm going to put a little something on the bottom just to let you know. Chris and Eric are partnering with Xero Shoes, or we are partnering with them, whichever way you look at it. We are thrilled to be doing that. We're going to have a couple things in the chat, 2 different links. One that's going to be a link that will help you get a signed and discounted copy of Born to Run 2, and not signed like Bob Dylan. Actually, Chris and Eric hand signed the thing that will be in the book. And also, when you do that, you can get 10% off a pair of Xero Shoes if you buy those at the same time. There's also a contest, a sweepstakes, that you can enter to win a copy of Born to Run 2 and also get a free pair of Xero Shoes at the same time. So without further ado, let me bring on our dynamic duo, Chris McDougall and Eric Orton. It's a pleasure to have you guys here. I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to back out for now. Have fun, and looking forward to what happens from here.
Thanks, Steven. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Eric. Good to see you, bud.
How's it going?
Oh, man, I just blazed through the door. I, of course, tried to cram in a couple of last-second chores. I took my Amish kick scooter, and those exact same autographed book plates that Steve was just referencing, I just blasted off to the post office to knock some into the mailbox. And let me show you what I'm wearing too, dude.
Ooh.
I know you were going berserkers over that you actually had, I think, a sexual experience with. Are those the same ones? Are those the Forzas also?
Yeah, just different color.
Yeah, I kind of dig your retro Lakers, but something about these, man, you know. Anyway, yeah. So here's the deal. I am really happy to do this experience because if we do it right, and this is like a tightrope walking kind of do it right, we can actually travel back through time and put people into the same experience I had with you. And I think you're unique in the sense that you talk about one thing that I don't believe anybody else talks about, which is lighten up the dashboard. You know, you're not talking about specific training modules or periodization or any of that kind of stuff. What you're telling people is turn the key in the ignition, light up the dashboard, and get all the data flowing in. So here's what we mean by that. 2004, I literally stumbled into the Copper Canyons in search of the Tarahumara, who I'd heard were the greatest distance runners on earth. That part proved to be true. The difficulty was I wanted to run like them and thought it was impossible. And then purely by happenstance, an editor who I kind of hate for a lot of reasons, but he's now been redeemed in my eyes forever, assigned me for Men's Journal to come and interview you. And in the first couple of minutes, I mentioned that I was down at Copper Canyons and I met these Indians, maybe you never heard of them, called the Tarahumara, and then you lit up. You're like, oh my God, I've been revering these people forever, but I've never actually seen them. And that's when we hatched a plan. There's going to be a 50-mile race in the Copper Canyon in less than a year. If you can train me for that race, I'll see if I can get you in. Of course, getting you in just meant getting in touch with the reclusive lone weirdo known as Caballo Blanco and say, hey, can I bring a +1? But here's what I want to begin with. That first meeting between you and I, Denver City Park, and you're telling me, don't worry, you can learn how to run. And you said there are 2 things you got to get your arms around: food and footwear. And I'm like, cool, skip the food. Let's get to the footwear. Because at the time, like everybody else, I was enchanted by the sexiness of shoes. It was always shoes. And what I missed until much later was your number one primal message. You got to get your eating dialed in. So what did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think for you, we kind of really honed in on the running piece of it. And I remember specifically telling you, because I think you asked a little bit about food, and I said, hey, let's just get the training started and let that take hold. And then what happened is that as you got confidence with your running, that gave you a good emotional feel of starting to look at your food. And then that's when we started to tackle the food. I don't normally do it this way. It was more of a hunch of, okay, you were so bummed about your running that I think that's we really needed to focus on and not double down with food at the same time. But I knew that would start to take care of it once you got into the training.
One thing I think is your special genius, and I'm using that word genius because I'm defining genius as an intuition. I think your special in genius is having an intuition for where to meet people where they are. So recently when we met Chelsea Luger in Arizona, a Native American wellness expert and dancer, and you use her dancing to teach her running form. With me, you realize, you know what? Let's get this guy running so he sees it can happen, and then we'll deal with the bigger issue. But the bigger issue being food. And the reason why is because most people's relationship to running is directly tied in with their relationship to food, right? So how does that cause problems?
Well, I think we've got to maybe take a step back and realize what food is doing for us. And, food is our fuel. And we should really not think of it anything more than that. And if we start to see our food as fuel, we'll start to have, turn on that dashboard that you talked about. And if we start to strip away the things that are detrimental from a fuel standpoint, we start to realize how good we can feel. And, as we'll talk, is that's the dashboard. That's the key to having that feeling of what you put in your mouth, the positive and negative effects to that. And it's really kind of stripping away a lot of the sugar. We all hear that, but maybe what you don't realize is how much other types of sugars are that can be detrimental either from a health standpoint or a performance standpoint. But the bottom line is to start to strip away some of those, kind of bad fuel so you can have the awareness of how good you do feel when you feel properly, and try to separate your fuel from your running, and don't run because of the food you eat. Separate the two.
I was just thinking, Eric, if you want to completely freeze up someone's engine, what do? Pour sugar in the gas tank.
Exactly. I mean, that's totally the whole analogy applies.
Yeah. So chapter 1 of Born to Run 2, our very first chapter, and this was something that we didn't have to think about for a second. Chapter 1, your fork is not your coach. And the reason why is because, a lot of people, you put on a few pounds, you're out of shape, so you start to run. Or you really enjoy wings and beers and pound cake and bundt cake. I'll go on all day. And so you think, okay, well, I want to be able to keep eating wings, so I'll run. The problem is you're constantly in a losing race against those calories. Your body evolved to store fat. It's what it wants to do. It's a very healthy thing for your body to store fat, or it was 20,000 years ago when food was scarce and in demand, when you actually had to fight your food in order to eat it. Now we don't. Now we just press a button. So the problem is we have an abundance of foods that we're taking in from all sides. And the second thing, which is really devilish, is our foods are now camouflaged. Our foods are wearing disguises. So if you want to actually eat one thing, you may not realize it has actually been converted to something else. Prime example, Subway. Subway positions itself all the time as like the dieter's friend, the healthy alternative. In Ireland, Subway bread is classified as cake. There is so much sugar in a Subway roll. It's literally a piece of cake. You're eating dessert. So I think what we decided to do was come up with something that would put people on the path to understanding the effect the food was having on them. Okay, if you're wondering, hey, why is my engine not running well, let's look at the fuel. And so that's why we lean toward the 2-week test as devised by Phil Moffatone. So tell us a little bit about the 2-week test.
Yeah, so the 2-week test is just that, where we're taking a 2-week window to really strip back all the sugar, all the high glycemic types of foods out of your diet and infuse all the lower glycemic and what you would consider healthier, better fuel for the engine. And through that 2-week window, you're going cold turkey. We have a no list and a yes list. So, some examples, you mentioned bread, whole grains, rice, quinoa, potatoes, berries, bananas, processed. All of that goes out the window during this 2-week test. And you infuse squash and carrots and tomatoes, coconut, mustard, avocado, all that power superfood fuel. And through this 2-week period, you're going to start to feel how there's positive and negative effects with your fuel. And again, how food is your fuel.
And this to me is the beauty of the system of the 2-week test, which is this is not a diet. This is not a punishment. This is just a way to light up your diagnostic panel so that you'll understand how your body is responding. So what you do with the 2-week test is pretty simple. You remove all those high glycemic foods that are going to jack up your blood sugars. Eat all the steak and salmon and avocado and olive oil and sour cream you want. Go berserkers. I would make these massive omelets. A 4-egg omelet with Goya canned octopus. I don't know why. For some reason, this seemed like a good idea. And a big old chunk of cheddar cheese, hot sauce, sour cream on top of that. It was fantastic. And you eat that, you're good for about 7 days. You don't need to eat again. That's it. So I'm good for that today. So at the end of the 2-week test, what you do is you very slowly reintroduce a little bit of high glycemic food to your diet. And you see how your body is going to respond. And the amazing thing about it is you feel it instantly. You eat a piece of bread and you're like, oh, wow. Like now I understand why I feel sluggish and sleepy and a little bit bloated. By the way, as we're talking, I'm watching all the messages light up. And people are like, F all that food talk, like what kind of Xero shoes are good for walking? What's the difference between the Force and HFS? People are fascinated by shoes. So let's pivot to shoes a little bit. This is a topic, food, we're going to have to revert to in the future because I think it is the one that is the most problematic. It's the one that people are the most resistant to. I'm exhibit A. You were saying that steak is better than potatoes. Oh boy. All right. Yeah. In effect, in a word.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I do 2 words is hell yeah. But listen, if you're vegetarian and vegan, it's a whole different topic. So let's pivot to shoes. I would like to leave with one action item for everybody who's now joining this conversation about making your fork not your coach, which is to number one, find those hidden sugars in your foods, right? Look at that piece of turkey breast you're buying at the deli counter. Look at the pound of roast beef and see how much sugar is actually infused in those foods. And the second thing is read up on the 2-week test. I think the 2-week test is an absolute life game changer.
Yeah. And I think, going back to just being aware of where sugar is. I mean, you'd be surprised, and just creating that awareness. And like you said, once the 2-week test is over with, I think some of the powerful aspects of that is once you do reinfuse some of the higher glycemic foods to feel how horrible that's going to feel. That's the true indicator, I think. So,
yeah, I think the place where people veer from the path is when they get focused on how they look, their size, their pounds, and not how they feel. If you start to understand how you feel in relation to your food, all of those other problems will be solved, because you'll feel it. Once you do the 2-week test, the second you have a couple of bites of food that is going to help you store fat, then you'll know it. And you'll know, and then at that point, it's your choice to make. Your dashboard has been turned on, and you can decide, okay, I'm going to eat this bowl of ice cream anyway. I know I'm going to feel like crap for a few hours. I know it's going to make me sluggish throughout the afternoon, but it's worth it in this moment. But at least you know the concept.
And I think too, real quickly, through all my years of coaching, there's also an emotional component. Not only when you eat better fuel, do you feel better physically, but emotionally, you don't go through that spiral of eating a bad food to make you feel better. And then once you're done eating the ice cream, you feel bad again. And then you reach for something else that's going to make you happy. You just cut that cycle completely out.
Yeah. And that's, to me, where the danger is, because once you're on that hamster wheel, you eat something you shouldn't, so you feel guilty. So you're going to run a little bit more and it doesn't work. And so you come back and you're starving. And so you eat a little bit more and you're constantly running around. Or like you said, you eat something you shouldn't, you feel bad about it. And so you reach for a comfort food to take care of that feeling of guilt and you double eat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a never ending cycle. And then, I think the key question we get a lot of times too is, can the 2-week test be adapted for vegans? Like, absolutely yes.
Yeah.
This is looking at a way of constructing a healthy roadmap for the rest of your life. And it's understanding how your body is responding to certain foods. Right. So it's not a ban on anything. But for instance, you know what? A fistful of cashews might be too much for me, but a half a fistful might be perfect. And you'll feel the difference. It's literally, you'll eat one cashew too many and suddenly go, oh yeah, I feel like I need a shot of espresso. Like that's your trigger. That's your cue that you need to adapt. So now we've lit up. So that was it. I should have gotten that from the start from you, and you reasoned correctly that I was in a mood for action, and that action being I wanted to run. I wanted to get out there on the roads, and I didn't want to, worry about 2-week tests and, looking for hidden sugars in my Subway sandwiches. So when I started to run, my next thing was, by this point, I'd read up a little bit about minimalism, barefoot running. This was kind of a really new deal back at the time. And I thought, okay, well, hang on a second. If Eric is telling me that overly structured shoes are a danger, that running form is everything, that the Tarahumara have fantastic longevity, both in their running, in their lives, because of their minimalist shoes, ergo, I should be in a minimalist shoe. And what'd you say?
Not until after the 50-mile race. Too soon, too much to do.
Yeah.
You can either do one or the other.
Yeah. You said, basically you've got a calendar year. Yeah. And in that calendar year, you can either be barefoot Ted or Caballo Blanco, but you can't be both.
And keep in mind, though, originally the race was supposed to be in November. So when we first made this decision, we even had a shorter period of time. But it eventually got moved to March, which gave us more time. But yeah, it's like, we need to get your running going and do what we need to do for that distance. And we needed to focus on that. So I do need to jump in halftime. We got to mention our giveaway tonight. It's a copy of Born to Run 2, signed copy of Born to Run 2.
Really?
With a pair of Xero shoes. So in the chat link, you will see the way to the live chat link is the way to sign up for that. So be sure you do that if you want a signed copy and a free pair of shoes that we're going to talk about. So
hey, do you hear all those animal noises in the background, Eric?
I know what it is.
My daughter just landed at the airport, and they're all texting back and forth. And I have the most annoying ringtones in the continental United States. I didn't realize this. Did I not know about this giveaway? It's a great giveaway. That's a great giveaway.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, okay.
So we decided, hey, we've got to really get you confident with your running, because that, for me, that was the most important thing on that weekend that we met, is that I needed you to kind of, for lack of a better way, buy in without knowing. And that's hard to do, Yeah. And so, we took our shoes off when we were in City Park, and we did some drills and skills barefoot to really help you start to feel that and to get that confidence going. But then once you got through the 50-mile race, then you kind of went all in, and it served you well for the last 15 years.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? 15 years, man. Yeah. 15 years. There is nothing, there is no appliance or vehicle or device in my household that has lasted as long as my legs, thanks to the whole realignment you gave me. So that was the situation. Here we are in Denver City Park. I was, I don't know, 250 plus pounds. I'd been told, repeatedly by extraordinarily respected sports medicine physician. I lived in Philadelphia, so I could go to the same sports medicine doctors as the Sixers, and they would kind of eye me up and down and go, "Why are you running, dude? You look like Moses Malone. Don't run. Buy a bike. Literally, buy a bike." Were the things I heard, and I believed it. So I see you, and you kind of get me, jazzed up, like you can do this. And the first move is take off your shoes, which again I've been told never do that. If you have plantar fasciitis, never take off your shoes. Never wear flip-flops. Your shoes must be protected. And you're telling me I'm going to launch you into space, man, without a capsule. So I think, first of all, why was that so important?
Well, why it's so important is because our feet are our foundation. Everything we do as runners is with our feet, and nobody's training their feet, and nobody maybe realizes how important the feet are for run form. And so, one of the things we tackled with you was just kind of overhauling your run form and to get you efficient. So how we strike the ground and where we strike the ground and how we use our feet when we strike the ground completely sets our structural system up for a good chassis. If we're talking about cars and engines, hey, our feet are our chassis, our suspension system, and it starts there. And it's also our support system. So if we're using our feet in a good way, now we're stable, and now we're firing other muscles. And so that was the first line of attack for you, is to really understand of pulling you from overstriding to striking the ground under you, and to use your feet better.
You know what else it is too, Eric? It is the sensory radar.
Yeah.
Too. And this is something I have really learned and keep relearning, is that I'm getting so much input from the sensation of my feet that it's indispensable to me. And I think we really learned this during the early days after Born to Run came out, and there was a huge surge in interest in barefoot running, but it wasn't really barefoot. And the big seller at the time were Vibram Five Fingers. And a lot of people bought the Vibram Five Fingers. And I remember I was at Governor's Island in New York, and that we were at the first annual Barefoot Running Festival. The entire island was full of barefoot runners. And a researcher named Pete Larson had set up a camera, and he was doing a sort of slow motion video of all the barefoot runners streaming by. And he kind of hid himself behind a tree, because sometimes, if you see someone filming you, you'll kind of tighten things up or change stuff. And so he was camouflaged, and no one could see him. And as runners are streaming by, he and I were both like cringing, like, "Oh my God, that looks horrible." And the reason why is because people were wearing Vibram Five Fingers, which is nothing more than an outsole. It's a piece of rubber under your foot. But that was just enough protection for them to really not care about their form. And people were still heel striking and overstriding and running at a very low cadence, and all the things that they wanted to correct. But they thought, okay, I'll buy the shoe. It's problem solved. And what we were seeing was not at all. So I think you were clever in understanding that this can be a long process, but a fun one.
Right. Yeah. And that's, looking at you, you saw this as a long-term project. It was the 50-mile race into Copper Canyon was the short-term goal. But hey, ultimately, what'd you tell me? I want to be able to go run anywhere, anytime, for as long as I want, right out my door. And you achieved that, and you've gotten better every year. You've gotten stronger every year. And it kind of does piggyback off what you're saying, is it really does start with the skill of running and how we use our feet and the run form and how that works hand in hand, and I've still even seen barefoot runners who have bad form. So, just going barefoot itself isn't just a catch-all for having good form.
Hey, here's something funny. I've been kind of working the process in reverse lately. So I've been doing these swim runs here in Hawaii, and I would, run down the road and then come to a canal and swim across it and then pop out the other side and then run back down the beach. And when I first started doing it, I was using a pair of like ultra cross country shoes. And I was like, I was pretty happy with those. But then it was the Aqua Force. Is that the Xero shoe? Yeah, the Aqua Force, which is actually designed for water sports. And I'm using Aqua Force. I really like it. And then I downshifted to the Cloud, the Warachi sandal, which I really liked. And then one day I don't know why, I just didn't use any of them. But it's funny, I was doing the same thing in reverse. Rather than going from barefoot up to a more structured shoe, I was going from a more structured shoe down, down, down. And now I really like the sensation, the sharpening, the sharpening of coming out of the water and literally touching ground when you haven't touched ground for 40 minutes of swimming, and reacquainting yourself with what it feels like to run on the ground. And what I like about it is, to me, that is reactivating that diagnostic panel. When you've been swimming, literally not walking for 40 minutes, and you stand up, and now I'm on pavement and I'm starting to run, suddenly the dashboard is lighting up and I'm getting all this sensory input. Like, okay, the ground is hard. Oh, there's a little bit of gravel here. I better straighten my back. I got to remember my cadence. And I really like that a lot. I like the fact that I'm awake and alert to all that input.
But I love the idea of adding variety to what you're putting on your foot, so you can have that. It's just like the food. You strip away something and then you put it back in and see how it feels. So I think for me as a coach, sometimes the shoe choice becomes just an all or nothing choice, but it doesn't have to be that way. It can be a quiver. It can be, what you're doing, 23 hours out of the day throughout the day to go into a more natural environment, and dabbling in different types of shoes to see how it feels, how getting that sensory feedback, like you mentioned. And that's, for me, that's how we can continue to improve over and over as we get older, through time, add to longevity. And it doesn't just have to be this all one choice for every day of the week. Start where you're at and start one day a week, add another day, and just start to understand how you're using your feet, how it feels, and then how that responds to how you're using other shoes.
So let's return to my story. So
yeah.
Denver City Park.
Yep.
You told me how to run barefoot. Oh, I get it. Okay. Land on your forefoot, not your heel. Shorten that stride. Get that cadence up. Oh, this feels really good. However, I want to run a 50-mile race in canyons with Scott Jurek in less than a year. Let's combine those two things. So I was running at the time, I believe it was in the Pegasus, which, again, circa 2004 was a relatively neutralish shoe.
Right.
Significant stack, but the heel to toe drop was not nuts. So I ran in those shoes, and by the time we ran the race, again, this was mind blowing to me. I just ran 50 effing miles, in a canyon against the greatest runners in the world. And I thought at this point, I got it licked. I'm the style master, I'm perfect. And I continued to run, and I went right from that race to the Leadville 100. So in one calendar year, a 50-miler wasn't enough. I'm going to double down to a 100-miler. And I started to have ankle and heel and Achilles pain. It was like nagging me, bothering me. And I thought, well, it can't be my form, because obviously my form is now perfect. And it kept happening. And finally, it was pointed out to me, dude, your form blows again. It sucks, because I turned off the diagnostic panel.
Yep.
By thinking that I was so good, I didn't need that input anymore. My form had gradually regressed back to the point where suddenly I wasn't going 180 strides per minute. I was probably down to like 100, that I was overstride. I was reaching out, all the mistakes. And I couldn't tell because the shoes were too built up. And so I got rid of the shoes. And that's why I am way more of a fire-breathing dragon about minimalism than you are, because I feel like that alcoholic that made the mistake, like, oh, damn it. Why did I have that one shot at tequila at the wedding? Because, I totally fell off the wagon. Why did I keep running the Pegasus? I should have used that opportunity to dial it down, and I didn't, and I regretted it. And that's why to this day, we've had this argument, right. I was adamant, let's only recommend Xeros. It's the only shoe on the market that to me does it. It's got the wide toe box, it's got the Xero drop. It remains true. It's not edging into Hoka territory even a little bit. And you're like, well, maybe not for everybody. But all right, so talk me through this, man.
Yeah, so I'm all for how you did how you do things now. I mean, but I know there's so many other people that don't want to scale back. When you first made that true transition, you cut way back. And a lot of runners out there aren't willing to cut back on the running they're doing to start that transition from a cold turkey standpoint. So
Right.
for those runners who aren't willing to go cold turkey and back off on their volume, slowly infuse it in. And it's another great way to do it. You're gonna build the strength. You're gonna start honing your form and feeling your form a little bit better in your cadence. And so again, start to see that quiver that, hey, like I said earlier, maybe there's one day a week where you're running in a very natural environment, Xero shoe for your recovery run. And that's another thing. Most people think about going really built up for the recovery run. It should be the other way around.
Yeah.
So you're really using your feet well to get that recovery.
Yeah.
And then, working from the other end of it. And then what happens is as you start working in a more natural environment, you're going to see your feet are going to seek out that natural environment more and more and more and more. And then your other shoes are going to start becoming a little bit more uncomfortable. And that's when you can really start to make that transition.
Right. So again, once again, it's the same concept. And that's the concept that you taught me and has been my true north ever since, is what's turning on the diagnostic panel. What's lighting up the dashboard and giving me information. When you run in a minimal shoe, you are now aware of how your posture and your balance is. You're aware of the ground underfoot. And this is telling your body a lot of things. I've noticed things like I'll be on a run and something will feel off. Like, hey, why is my front of my left foot feel weird? I realize, it's because my posture's off. I'm leaning, I straighten my balance and my posture, and suddenly my foot feels better. And then the whole run is transformed in the matter of a couple of strides. But one thing I think is a massive, major misconception people have is they feel like it's a choice. I can either run or I can learn form. And yeah, in my case, where I'm trying to dial up from 0 to 50 in 9 months, that is the dilemma. That is the crossroads. But the fact of the matter is, you have discovered ways to make this process painless and fun through a couple of quick, easy exercises. So let's talk through a couple of those.
Yeah. So one is our foot core. We all know about training our abdomen core, but do we think about training our foot core? So training our feet, like we mentioned earlier, is super, super important. So one simple exercise that's very, very potent is simply take off your shoes and socks and balance on one foot on your forefoot and just let your heel hover off the ground and just balance as long as you can. Maybe use the counter of the kitchen a little bit as an aid, and you'll start to understand how challenging it is for your feet to have to stabilize in every step we take. And that is just a potent way to strengthen the feet. Secondly, now we're going to learn run form in 5 minutes. Now that you got your shoes and socks off, you're going to go stand in front of a wall and simply run in place in front of that wall. And as you do, you're going to flip on your playlist to the B-52's Rock Lobster song. And you're going to run to the beat in place to the beat of the music of Rock Lobster. And what that's doing is creating 180 beats per minute, or the ideal cadence. So you begin to feel what good cadence is. So now I have my athletes do intervals to Rock Lobster at home before they go for their run. So they're doing 3, 4, 5 by 1 minute, 2 minute Rock Lobster intervals against the wall. They've turned their muscles on. They've turned on the electrical system, the dashboard, and they're training their feet and they're training their cadence. So then they go out and go for their run and they understand what it feels like, and they can mimic that feeling. They can hear the song in their head.
Isn't it crazy? Once you get it, I should point out, when you say facing the wall, it's actually with your back to the wall.
Yeah, back to the wall.
Your back to the wall, so you won't kick back because you'll kick the wall.
Right.
And it's a really common. And I didn't realize how common that was until I watched both Chelsea Luger and Rich Rawl. Rich Rawl was kicking back all the time. And I thought, man, this guy is like a super conditioned ultra athlete. And yet he's wasting a ton of energy by kicking back. So you stand with your back against the wall, play rock lobster, and you do that. You can't land on your heel. You can't run in place and land on your heel. It won't work, you know. You can't overstride. You can't kick back. And then you learn that. Boom, 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 boom. You learn that cadence really easily. And then my wife had a genius innovation. My wife's trick was cut through all the nonsense. She would just walk out the door with her shoes in her hands and start her run. And the second she felt any kind of discomfort at all, you know, whether a little bit of an abrasion or her calf was sore or anything, she just put her shoes on and continued the run. And what happened very holistically and naturally was the barefoot portion just day by day got a little bit further. She never forced it. It felt better until she went from 50 yards to 5 miles running barefoot.
And that's a microcosm of how it maybe should work through time, you know, throughout the whole week. You know, what I'm doing in my 5-hour runs in the mountains, the type of shoe I'm using is much, much less than what I was doing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So.
What I love about the rock lobster fix too is that once it's in your head, it's there for life. You know, you hear rock lobster a couple times, or our awesome friend Lady Southpaw, who wrote a song for us, Born to Run 2. You know, you hear that once or twice, man, you can never unhear it. And so now when I go for a run, instantly in my brain, I was born to run to boom, 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 boom. So you don't even need it. You have that metronome now. It's in your DNA.
All right, so we're going to give everybody homework. Our next session is going to be on run form. So between tonight and our next reboot, practice your rock lobster.
Yeah.
And I've been alerted by our team of producers that we have so many questions that we've got to cut the questions.
What?
Yeah,
cut the questions. All right. Well, what do you mean? Not cut them out entirely.
Wrap it up. What's
okay.
that?
Yeah. So cut to the questions. Okay, dude.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to it. How do we do this? How do we do the questions?
They're going to send it to us.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we should put a prize out there
for
who posts a rock lobster.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
All right. I'm running the Boston Marathon and don't run roads. I love trails and have been a barefoot style Xero runner.
Ultra.
Everyone now says I need cushion for roads. Thoughts?
Got a lot of thoughts.
If you love trails, why are you running Boston?
Right. Okay, but let's assume it's for a good reason. Maybe they're running for charity or accompanying somebody. So, okay, they're doing this.
Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, I would say if you have a lot of experience with the Xeros and you're comfortable on the roads, I mean, go for it. I mean, you certainly don't need cushion.
No.
You know, that's, you know, I think the best answer I can give you is the further we get away from the ground, the less and less we're using our feet and our form well. So
right.
I would say, you know, start, you know, Boston's in April. So you're going to start your build up, and it's a perfect opportunity for you to start your build up in your Xero shoes that you're used to wearing.
Yeah. What shoes would you recommend? I would say Zalens. What would you say?
I like the Zalen. I love the HFS and now the new Forza.
Yeah. Let's just agree on the Zalen then.
Yeah.
I'm kind of crazy about that shoe, dude. I'll tell you why. I think it's because, you know, when you first alerted me to the fact that Xero was making these really good shoes, I'd never tried them. And they sent me some to try. And at the top of the box, I pulled a pair of Zalens. Like, all right, let's try these. And I put them on. I'm like, holy Christmas. You know, and I ran roads and then I ran trails. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to beat the crap out of these things. And there is like a crazy old like construction site with this crappy old creek running through it with all kinds of like, you know, construction rubble in the creek. And I like, kind of ran through the creek in the Zalens and these things like, oh my God, this is a goddamn good shoe. So anyway, that's why I've had this emotional attachment. It was a revelation shoe for me. Okay, next question.
Here it comes. All right. I am 55 and just started to walk and learn about benefits of barefoot. What is the best tips you can give for a beginner at my age?
First of all, well done, beginner 55. Right on, right on.
So, I mean, if you're starting all this at the same time, that's the best place to start, with a clean slate. Sometimes it's harder for that veteran runner to make that transition quicker. So I would just, take the advice from Chris's wife, Mika, of just going longer and longer, throughout the week or throughout your weeks. And there's, just feel the ground. I mean, I don't think there's anything more to say other than you're a beginner, and let your progress in walking progress with your use of the barefoot shoes.
Yeah, and I think two things. The rock lobster is going to benefit this person tremendously. And number two, just release all those expectations of what you think you're supposed to do, how fast you're supposed to run, how far, whether you should be in a 10K. Just release all that kind of stuff and just go out. Whatever puts a smile on your face and you end this with a smile on your face, that's the perfect workout.
Yeah, and if he's starting to look to run, just like what Chris said, make the runs as easy as possible. Don't see them as fitness. Make them as enjoyable as possible, and then things will just fall into place after that. So great question.
Yeah.
All right, Alexa, next one. Good. Ryan, could added sugar be helpful to boost cardio endurance?
Is the answer no or hell no?
I would go hell no.
Yeah. Hell no.
So, obviously there's maybe a difference, or there is a difference between sugar and maybe what we think of sugar and carbohydrates. So you can be eating something that's higher in carbohydrates, but have no sugar, but carbohydrates are still considered a sugar. So it's kind of a tricky question. I'm assuming that we're thinking more of the added sugars. But, I think it can certainly boost cardio endurance if you're not used to fat burning. So and we'll get into this in later episodes once we get into our focus training of how, using certain training zones or training gears can help spur more fat burning. So my answer to this would be maybe strive to train your body to burn more fat as fuel, so you don't have to rely on the sugars or the carbohydrates.
Yeah. It basically comes down to two kinds of fuel. There's the nice slow burn, the nice heavy log in the winter fireplace, and there's like a piece of newspaper that'll torch up. And the thing about the newspaper is it torches up so fast, you got to throw in more and more and more. That's sugar. It's a fast burn fuel. Our friend Billy Barnett, who is the master of the mic drop quote, says, sugar? Well, I don't eat a little bit of sugar. Just wait. I don't use a little bit of heroin.
Right. Exactly.
Use it. Yeah. All right. What else we got, Alexa?
How do you keep your bare feet warm outdoors in winter?
Let me start with that for 1 second. And not just because I'm living in a perpetual 85 degree.
What?
When I was living in Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania, where it gets very cold, here's the weird thing, dude. My feet got cold less when I ran with a minimal shoe, and they got cold last. And so I thought, you're going to need like thick wool socks and the rest of it. I was going out with no socks in a minimal shoe on gravel roads, and it did not feel bad. What's going on with that?
I've experienced the same thing, and I think it's just because your feet are working more. You're just engaging more muscles. Your feet are working rather than being in a cast of a built-up shoe where you're not having to use and engage, and that just goes to the whole point of being in a more natural environment. I've experimented with running. I think I've run in minus 10 degrees with no socks and been fine. I think I have about a 400 meter run from my house to the trail. And I think that first 400 meters is a little chilly, but then it's just like anything else. Once you warm up, I was fine. So
everybody, we got to bring this in for landing. I just want to close with a couple quick thoughts. One is just think about turning on the switchboard. So do your 2-week test, try the rock lobster. balance on one foot. These are not skills or drills. These are things which are going to give you lots of input. They're going to tell you how your body's functioning. Super useful. And they're going to get you excited because as the input comes in, you're reacquainted with how your body works. So everybody remember to do our prize giveaways. Don't forget to jump into that really great giveaway.
And I think we're supposed to bring Steven back in. Is Steven still there? Is he going to come in and close us out? There he is.
No, I was taking a nap. Are you kidding me? Why would I listen to this? No,
you got to get your sleep whenever you can.
Yeah, that's the fun part about running a footwear brand, an outdoor brand. You spend a lot of time indoors and then you need a nap. So first of all, thank you guys. This has been absolutely delightful. Secondly, just a reminder for everyone else, we're going to be doing these every month. Make sure you're opted in to find out when that is. In fact, Alexa, Jocelyn, if you could put in the chat how people can make sure they can hear about the upcoming ones. For all the questions we didn't answer, we're going to take a look at those. In the beginning of the next session, we'll address some of those. There's a bunch of themes, so we'll definitely jump into those. And of course, we've got 3 more of these scheduled, but if it keeps going well, we might keep going to help you become a happier, healthier human being. A reminder again, you can get a discounted and autographed copy of this incredible book, Born to Run 2. By the way, here's the rock lobster drill photo. Here we go. Back up against the wall. And also, when you do that, you can also get 10% off, excuse me, a pair of Xero shoes if you place that order for the book. At the same time, you get the shoes. And we do have a winner. Next time, we might give you a little extra time. And this is going to be really annoying because the winner for the free book and free copy of Xero Shoes has a name that I will butcher mercilessly. Juerg, J-U-E-R-G, Sheeran. I'm giving it a whirl. Either way, drop us an email and just send that to, who should we send that to? Send that to, I don't know. Excuse me. Pardon me. We'll find you actually. So we've got the email. We'll email you and let you know what you can do to take advantage of that. We can't wait to hear what happens when you get the book. Start putting all this stuff into practice, and of course, do that in your Xero Shoes as well. Anything else you guys can think of other than saying thank you? This has been a great event, a lot of participation. We really appreciate it, and we really can't wait to do what's next and help you live life feet first. Anything you guys want to add?
Just keep sending these questions in because the more questions we get, right, Eric, the more we're really dialing in our thinking. So this has been tremendously helpful for us too.
Yeah, questions are where it's at. So keep them rolling.
Beautiful. So once again, thank you all for being here. We can't wait to have you on the next episode of the Born to Run Reboot. And until then, go out, have fun, and live life feet first.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.